Hello, I am Sonia Madison,
And I'm Jonathan Mason.
and welcome to Law Unfiltered, where we talk about current events and some of the legal issues underlying them. Now, the biggest thing right now is Colin Kaepernick. Colin, obviously I'm not a big NFL fan, who did not stand during the National Anthem. And I found it even more interesting with the fact that we just had the Olympics. I remember Gabby Douglas got some heat because she didn't put her hand over her heart, even though some other athletes did not do the same but didn't get equal heat. So it seems to be a pattern that when it's a minority that does something that people don't consider the standard, and by the standard I guess I mean what the legislation, even though it's never really used, but the U.S. Code defines as you stand up when the national anthem is played, you put your hand over your heart if you're not a military. If you are military, you do a salute. But of course, there's no penalty, right? Because everyone has First Amendment rights. So anytime anyone goes against that, particularly if they're minority, there is heat. But then, obviously with the Olympics, when someone doesn't put their hand over the heart, this majority didn't get as much play. But what do you think about what he did?
I don't really equate the two situations because Colin Kaepernick declined to stand for a specific political, social reason.
Mm-hmm.
He was trying to make a point. And to me, this is one of the most frustrating recent episodes, in American culture, history, because it's so ironic that people are blasting him for exercising rights that are so quintessentially American.
Right.
And so for him to be getting we don't have to agree with the way he did it, which I hear a lot of people saying, oh, it's the way he did it. Well, hell, what difference does it make? In fact, I think if I wanted to make a political statement, the higher profile the scene is, or, the environment I'm in, which an NFL game is pretty high profile, then the more impact your statement could have. I'm troubled by this in so many ways. First of all, he never drew attention to himself in doing this. He didn't walk around with signs, with shirts, or nothing like that. He did it for 2 games before anybody noticed. He wasn't dressed for the games. He sat on a bench, away from the teammates, and they asked him about it after the game, and he very eloquently stated why he was doing that, and he's just getting blasted. And I know I'm covering a lot, including things you didn't ask me, and you want to go back and chop it up a little bit. But to me, one of the thing that brought it back for me a little bit and made me feel decent about it again is the fact that the veterans have stood up in support of him and said, like, this is freedom of speech that we fight for, and we don't have to agree with him, but what he's doing is what Americans have the right to do. And so that's the bottom line. Now, I feel like I should shut up and let you ask a question, but I can't right now.
No, go ahead. I think
what's getting lost in all of this is that, and I don't know if this is intentional or not, but the underlying message or the underlying people he's fighting for, or at least raising awareness for, that's nowhere in the discussion because everybody's just talking about him and how he's disrespecting veterans, which he's clearly said that wasn't his intention, and a lot of veterans don't feel like that's what he's doing.
right.
Or he's a millionaire and he should, this country gave him the opportunity to make all this money, which the more resources you have, some would say the more responsibility you have. And it's about time. How often are athletes criticized for not standing up? It was just a lot of it was very disheartening. And the fact that the underlying issue is not really the one that's getting the attention. And again, I go back to how articulately he stated his point and why he was doing it. And so even today, just reading about players like Boomer Esiason, just calling him the most disgraceful athlete he's ever seen, it just kind of makes my blood boil, really. And again, whether if it were, I would probably stand for the flag. I've never not stood for the flag or for the national anthem at a game. But if that's his way of, getting his message out, then I can totally respect that, and I'm not going to criticize him for that.
Or send him death threats and all the other stuff that he's receiving.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Well, I did do a little history because obviously this is not the first time someone has used the national anthem, particularly at a sporting event, as an opportunity to send a message. And so what I also find interesting is, first of all, it didn't become the national anthem until 1931. Now, clearly, America has been through a lot of, turmoil, a lot of wars, a lot of, all this patriotism beyond, prior to 1931. And so to say that, any time before that has no symbol of patriotism, and then until we get the symbol, that's the only way you can respect, I think is completely crazy. But even then, when it became up to Congress to sign it, a lot of people were saying this is completely unnecessary. This is a waste of time to sit here and make a national anthem when there's so many other issues. I mean, at this time it was like World War I going on, so many other issues going on, and we're having to discuss how can we symbolically exercise or show patriotism. I mean, clearly it does not. You're not defined by a song, right, or whether or not you love this country. So that was interesting. But then, since then, I mean, you had like 1965 when the two, black men in the Olympics, I want to say the Utah City, raised their fists, and it's a symbol of human rights. And yes, they received the death threats. They did all that at that time, sure, similar to what Kaepernick is receiving. But subsequently, they were applauded. They were recognized and celebrated, and they received the Arthur Ashe. They were, commended for their bravery. And so the fact that we're now going to say that, well, yeah, we celebrated you then, but there's no reason to do it now. Well, clearly there have been issues that have come up.
But I don't think it's too late for that to happen for him, because if you look into history, like Muhammad Ali, I mean, he just recently died, and he was just this hero, got this heroic send-off. But there was a time when he was among the most hated people in America when he refused to go into the military and fight in the Vietnam War. So it was only like later that people recognized the bravery or courage.
But that's my point. Why aren't we learning from the past when we're condemning people for
Well, we're in a different, for one thing, we're in a social media era where people can just anonymously fire off all these hate, comments filled with hatred. And, if they had to sit across from a person and make these statements, they probably would never make. We have more news media than ever. And, the news cycle is so funny because the minute something else happens big, whether in sports or outside of sports, this is just going to be, washed away.
Last week's news.
Now, there was a period, I want to say it was in the 90s, when this basketball player, his name was formerly Chris Jackson. He changed it to another name that it escapes me right now.
At the Denver Nuggets.
Right, and he wouldn't stand for the national anthem.
But from my understanding, even similar to Kaepernick, it was a while before people even noticed that he wasn't coming out of
I don't remember, but I remember that they eventually agreed that he would just stay back in the locker room while the anthem was being played. And I wonder if they're going to do that with Kaepernick.
Well, no, they came to what happened, at least from my understanding, what happened was initially he was staying in the locker room while it played. And so no one even really noticed that he wasn't participating. And then when it became knowledgeable, they suspended him for a game. And then his union representatives fought against the league, and they agreed that during the anthem he has to stand, but he can pray during the time that it's going on.
But I wonder if with Kaepernick something is going to happen where because it's going to everything fades, but probably I guess they play tonight, and so there's going to be so many people there to cover that and see what he does. So I'm sure, I don't want to say the defiance, but to get his point, help make his point, he'll probably want to be out there sitting again. But
Well, I mean,
then
he
it's
could
just
keep
going to
doing
keep
what he was
going
doing.
on and on and
People are
on.
going to look for him anyway. So
They're going to look for him, but if he's not out there, then they'll be like, oh, okay, well, we came out here to cover this, and he's not even out here, and then he comes out after it's over.
We still make a story about that.
They would make a story about it, but I don't think people would continue to come to see what he's going to do. And then, aside from that, football-wise, I mean, there was talk that he wasn't going to make the team anyway. So some people, some cynics will say that he's doing this to, make it harder for the team to release him, because now it look like they're releasing him they can release him for whatever reason they want, but because of his, actions with respect to the national anthem. But it's just.
But to me, it's deja vu, because with the Chris Jackson guy, after that got resolved, he only played for maybe a year or two. Then he got traded, and then subsequently, once his contract was up, no one would bring him on. But I also just find it very interesting that it seems like even when Beyonce came and did her halftime show, and people were all upset talking about this is not the arena where you make any type of public statements. I mean, I should only be here to watch you entertain me. And I think that entitlement that we, as I guess the audience, have is unfortunate. I mean, again, we have a history of athletes using their platform and being rewarded for that to make statements. And so for us to then go back to the times where we are, punishing them, it's like we didn't learn anything.
Well, but I don't know. I feel like athletes don't often make statements enough because, of the repercussions, and a lot of athletes, especially the higher profile ones, they have a lot of endorsements, and if they're supporting causes that aren't mainstream or what have you, then a lot of people say they don't do it because they don't want to lose their endorsements and their marketability. So
but
I think in general athletes
recently they've come out. I feel like LeBron James came out.
Yeah, but you're talking about 4 people out of how many?
But these are the 4 high-profile NBA players.
Yeah, I know, but the NBA, they're not the only athletes out there. And I agree, they came out, they made a statement, but what they did, I wouldn't compare to what Colin Kaepernick did, and sort of the same American, civil disobedience kind of. And another thing,
which I really don't consider what he did civil disobedience.
I understand, but I'm just saying the things that are quintessentially American in terms of our free speech, our right to protest, those type of things that make our country or our government or our freedoms unique, or at least relatively unique. I think that fits more into. I think just standing up, and I'm not being critical of LeBron and Dwayne Wade, because I like what they did as well, but I don't know. I just think that I just put what Colin Kaepernick did in a different category.
Well, and I think one thing that we haven't talked about, but is one other reason why this is on the forefront, is because, at least to me, it's because of the Black Lives Matter movement. I mean, obviously, issues that's been going on, particularly with police and activist relations or community relations, has clearly brought a lot of minority issues to the forefront. Even when you talk about immigration, I mean, obviously, we talked about Trump and what he plans on doing in terms of this wall, but immigration is a huge topic. And so I think the fact that we've already having to discuss these issues in a political, election year right now. And so the fact that there is tension, and then you have a minority coming out and making a stance. Because I also read somewhere back in, I want to say 2004, there was a white female basketball player. She was the captain of her basketball team, and she turned around as the national anthem was being played in a protest to the Iraq War. Well, I didn't know about it, so it clearly did not garner the attention that a Kaepernick was getting. Now, granted, it was college women's basketball. It doesn't have the same platform, but nonetheless, this is there's an issue going on with minorities that is now being coincide with how people are speaking about it.
Well, and I think a lot of it, I really do believe, is that if people don't like the cause or the message,
Right.
then they're not going to
Right.
like your methods.
Right. Even if they
And
don't even
that's-
know, like, 'cause again, with Gabby Douglas, people were saying, "Oh, she's making a protest," and she really wasn't. So you're so quick to be able to admonish this message that you're not even listening to what someone's message is, because at least what I'm hearing, you're saying Kaepernick's message was just a freedom of speech.
Well, all he did to me was he just said, I don't want to stand for the national anthem of a country that oppresses minorities and allow people to be murdered, and nothing gets done about it. I mean, I don't think it's his job to come up with the solution to the problem, and it's fully his right to say, I don't want to stand for the national anthem. And I don't think he has any more responsibility than that. And he's already you would think that he would have created more dialogue about the issues, but all that's happened is dialogue about his methods.
Right.
And that's the worst part of it to me.
But I even dare say, before someone asked him about it, I mean, we don't know what his message was. We just saw that he wasn't participating. And so for people to instantly admonish him without even knowing his message, assuming he's making one at all, is to be quick to jump on an ongoing issue because you just, like you said, you disagree with the message that's already been put out there, even when this person hasn't even stated why he's not standing. And like you said, he was doing it for a while, so clearly, without saying anything about it. So, clearly his only message was, I'm not standing up for the flag until someone, or not the flag, but the national anthem. So, I mean, I'm with you. I think this is very interesting, but only because, in my opinion, I just feel like only certain people are being targeted when they do it. I mean, I don't think a lot of people agree with how this country is running in certain issues. I mean, that's why we have elections, so you vote on the person who best, coincides with how you feel like certain issues should be decided. But again, it's just very interesting to see how quick we are to revert back to the 60s and the 30s when people were getting the death threats, and then we later celebrate them for making change, and now we're doing it all over again, the vicious cycle.
Well, I'll be watching tonight to see what he does. I will admit that, but
I wouldn't even be surprised if other people joined him, honestly. And
Well,
I did appreciate the NFL come out with a statement saying, hey, we have this national anthem here as an opportunity for people to stand and show reverence. However, if this is, freedom of speech, and we respect Kaepernick's opportunity or ability to exercise that right. And so I appreciate them, making that statement.
Right, I agree. Well,
tell us what you guys think, because it'll be ongoing for a while. I mean, I know you say next week we'll have another issue, but I mean, I do think if more people start doing what he's doing, it might go on a little bit longer.
Yeah, I just don't think it's going to catch on. I think if it were going to catch on, it would have already, even in a short time, because there have been baseball games since then. There was a football game last night, and I'd just be surprised if it did catch on. But I'd be happy at the same time if it did.
So if people exercise their freedom of speech not to stand, that's all it is.
That's right.
Well, tell us what you think, and thanks so much for listening.
All right, we'll see you next time.